You may think that patience is one of the most boring spiritual qualities, but in reality, patience is the key to success, not only in our spiritual life, but also for anything else we want to achieve in our outer life. Without the necessary patience, you will simply not achieve anything worthwhile in your life. Now, in this episode, we unpack the different ways, strategies, and insights of how to look at patience and develop patience. For instance, we're looking at the right approach to failure. We examine the idea that the goal that we strive for needs and wants us just as much as we need it. And we also look at ways of how we sabotage ourselves by setting unconscious deadlines. My name is Abhinava, and this is Spirit Matters, a podcast helping modern seekers integrate their spiritual awakening experience into their daily life. My co-host Vajan and myself are meditation teachers with over 25 years of experience, and every week we dive into a new spirituality challenge. Subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, or leave us a review in your favorite podcast app. We really appreciate that. And for now, let's dive into this episode.
In the world, most people, when they think of patience, they think of patience as a very passive quality. So it's just simply sitting there and waiting and doing nothing. Where, in fact, in all spiritual traditions, I think patience is seen as actually a dynamic and active process. So it's not just simply doing nothing. It's actually a process of truly preparing yourself for the goal or the achievement or the activity that you are focused on.
So preparation, but without expectation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And patience as well is a difficult, people think of it as quite a low level quality, I think. And I think it's like something that when
everybody can have if they just wanted to.
But I think, in fact, when you actually really deeply look into patience, you start to realize that it embodies aspects of so many other divine qualities. That embodies some aspect of divine strength, of confidence.
How is it confident?
Because the thing is, for you to truly have patience, you have to have confidence that you are going in the right direction, that your goal is approaching you in some way. If you don't have confidence, you're not being patient. You're going to be worrying. You're going to be feeling.
You're going to switch your goals. You're going to
exactly.
Right.
So I think it embodies many different divine qualities, and it brings them all together into the experience.
That's very unexpected. Very unexpected. So what other qualities do you see there?
So
surrender?
So yeah, exactly. So surrender, acceptance, both of those qualities. And then I think confidence and inner strength. All of those, to me, are a part of the experience of patience.
Plus, I would say wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom in that. I think there's a lot of wisdom that we need to unpack when we talk about patience, because it's much more, like you were saying, much more than just sitting and waiting. It's an active quality, and that sounds very controversial or contradictory, that it's something active. So how do you explain that? It's like when you're working to a goal, you don't give up working for the goal. It's like the farmer, the farmer's working for his crops, but he has to have a lot of patience because the crops don't come the next day. It's not like he sows the seeds and he runs out the next day to look at his carrots growing. No, he knows it's going to take months. But still, every day he has to work the land. He has to till the soil. He has to, fertilize the land. He has to work hard. And then only after months and months, he'll get his crops. And I think in the spiritual life, what we also do, we are like farmers in the sense that we're sowing the seeds. We're praying and meditating every day. We're doing our spiritual discipline. We're doing our chanting or our reading and journaling. And we hope that at some point we will get the fruits, the harvest, the inner peace, the inner joy, the purpose that comes from that. And it's a real trap to want those things too soon, to want the crops before you're ready to receive them. So there's also a wisdom that perhaps you are not ready yet for whatever you want to achieve yet. You may feel that you're ready. You may feel like, I want this peace right now. I need it. But perhaps some aspect of your being still needs more preparation. And I think patience is the wisdom to acknowledge that we may not be ready for what we need to achieve. We need more preparation. And I remember from my days when I started my spiritual journey that I was very impatient, meaning I was expecting the results far sooner than they came. I mean, they did eventually come, but I remember in the beginning, my mother actually had to tell me, hey, slow down, take it easy. I was actually spending a lot of time in meditation, more than was good for me. And at some point when you meditate for too long, you kind of drift away from the everyday world. You kind of become a bit spacey, and that was happening to me. And so I really had to realize to just, I think a great way to develop patience is to let go of expectation. Because you're basically doing the same things. You're going through the routine. You're doing your meditation, but you're not expecting anything. The impatience comes from, I want it now, you know? Whereas if you just let it go and you just develop the habit of doing your practice, then over time, those things will definitely come. But you're not so attached to them coming right away.
Yeah, so I think that captures a couple of key things. So the wisdom is knowing that you're on the right path and that you're doing the right practices. When you're wise, you're going to be taking the right actions in your life. But there's also a part of wisdom is knowing that things take time and the process needs time to bear fruit. And so when you're wise, you will be naturally become patient because you'll know that, okay, I'm on the right track, I'm going in the right direction, I'm doing the right practices, and however long it takes is however long it takes.
Yeah.
And so that's also part of the acceptance of the practice as well, of accepting that even if you are incredibly enthusiastic, you cannot change some fundamental facts about the universe and nature around you. And some practices and some qualities and some attributes will take time for them to actually bear fruit and start to manifest in your life. And I think a lot of people in the world today do really suffer from impatience, which is such an impediment to actually truly developing themselves in ways that are going to be deeply transformative and make them a better version of themselves. But if you don't have the wisdom to see that this practice, if you do it regularly and if you do it with some intensity, and if you take the time to allow it to bear fruit, you'll miss out on so many things in life. So many of the best things in life you would miss out on.
So maybe we value the goal a bit too much. Like the process itself is the satisfaction is also in the process.
Yeah, that's really hard to teach people because when we're growing up, and especially in our Western culture, it seems that our culture is very results focused. So we have lists of who are the 50 richest people in the world. In sporting fields, we say, you know, who has scored the most goals or who's hit the most home runs or who's achieved these particular outcomes. But we never really think about how someone actually went about achieving those things. What was the actual steps taken, and what sort of qualities are actually involved in becoming a master of any field. And anyone who's done any practice and achieved mastery, the big thing that they've invested is it's not talent, it's not natural ability. What they've really invested a huge amount of is time. And that's not just time in a non-focused way. It's a really intentional time.
It's dedicated practice over long periods of time.
Exactly. And so when we think of something that we want, and especially when it comes to becoming more illumined inside our own nature, having more peace, having more love, having more joy, if we take that as our goal and all we think about is, oh, how much I want to achieve my goal, we'll become frustrated because the goal doesn't just come to us just by our will. We actually have to take all of the steps in between. And the steps in between is the daily practice. It's turning up every day and aligning yourself with the divinity within you. It's becoming more aware. It's becoming more peaceful and connected with the deepest parts of your being so you can actually receive the information or receive the wisdom that exists within you.
Do you think that people nowadays perhaps have less patience as people in more ancient times?
Yeah, I think life was much more conducive to
I think so too.
To being present because there weren't the same level of distractions.
Yeah.
So I think some anthropologists or were looking and trying to figure out how much time ancient people actually spent working, and they think hunter-gatherers probably spent about 4 hours a day hunting and gathering.
The 4-hour workday. They achieved it.
So then you've got to think, okay, these people then had like quite a long period of time to be sitting around a campfire, to be with their family group, with their tribe. And there wasn't the same level of mental complexity that we have now. So people's minds, because you didn't have access to information in the way that we have now, you couldn't even wonder about what people in different continents looked like because you didn't have a concept of there being other people living in different continents. So the world was much smaller. And I think in some ways that small world of the valley you lived in, the savannah that you were moving through, that became your whole world. And so there was a connection and a simplicity to your life that in some ways that we've lost because of the way that the world has gone, which is not a bad thing
No,
per
exactly.
se,
Yeah.
but we do need to find some balance again. We always tend as humans to swing to the extremes. So when we move in the direction of complexity and knowledge and information, it's very easy to overdo that and think that more information is always going to be better.
Right.
Which is obviously not true.
Sometimes you need to slow down to achieve more.
Yeah.
There's one aphorism of Sri Chinmoy that I like a lot, and I have to repeat that to myself because it applies to me. I can learn from this, and it is slow down if you really want God's golden crown. And I'm somebody who is very fast-paced in my life. I like to do many things. I like to tick the boxes. It's important, tick the right boxes. I have this Calvinist, long, deep Calvinist DNA inside me that needs to achieve things. Otherwise, I won't make it to heaven.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know who the Calvinists were, they were people who believe in the importance of work.
Work showed if you were eligible for heaven or not. And Netherlands, Scotland, and Switzerland are famous Calvinist countries. And I have to say, great work ethic. Gives you great work ethic. Gives you a bit of stress, perhaps, in your easy free time.
Yeah.
But we spent 5 days in upstate New York before we traveled here to Queens, and there we lived a very, I would say, slow life in the sense that, we didn't have anything on the schedule. We didn't have to achieve things. We were not we didn't go to work, of course, and we had no set schedule. And we made campfires in the evening. And I have to say that sitting around the campfire, it's so wholesome. Didn't you
really
feel?
Is.
It was like really nice to just to stare into the fire.
Yeah.
And this idea of life slowing down, and you had an idea of a certain fullness when you went to bed like that, because I think we shared, we talked, we had nice conversations, and that idea of just doing things without really enjoying the present moment, we lose something there. And that's why patience is also just a really valuable virtue.
Yeah. Because it's that feeling that we should always be doing something that causes so much unease and
love it.
Such a sense of the difficulty to sit still, because it always feels like, well, shouldn't I be doing something at this moment?
Yeah.
And there's some real wisdom in knowing that there is a time for doing things, but there's also a time for not doing things. There's a time, there needs to be a time in your life for being present to the people around you, being present to Mother Nature's gifts and the beauty, and being present in your own body to actually be able to listen to it. Because when we're not actually present in the moment, and we're busy thinking that we should be somewhere else doing something else and thinking about all the things that we're trying to achieve, it takes us away from this present moment, and it always puts us somewhere in the future. And it puts us in the future in a way that we can't actually even interact with the future. We're just thinking about it.
But that also has its place. We do have things to achieve in life. We do have goals. We do have dreams that we want to manifest. And if we're just sitting around campfire gathering fruits all day, we won't achieve much in this modern day and age.
Yeah, but I think one of the things that people start to notice as they get older is that it's very easy to lose touch with your own being, with your own actually physical body. Like you're embodied in this physical form, and it's constantly giving you feedback. And that you see in life, that you see many people over the course of their life have become very disconnected from their own bodies. And so when their body is trying to give them a message that they're working too hard, they perhaps need to rest, or there's something going on, they're getting sick, they're developing an illness, they just override those things and they keep pushing and pushing and pushing until their body really breaks down on them. And I think that is not wise. That's not wise to be so in your mind and so outside of your body that you don't notice when you're pushing too hard, or you're creating a situation where your body is actually going to rebel against you and cause you to have to stop. So having that alignment, that knowing what your capacity is, and our capacity can always be transcended. We can always do a little bit more than perhaps we think we can.
Yeah.
But it's also, there's some real wisdom in having that balance.
And there's a way to go about that from the mind. Like our mind, I think, is really out of touch with this natural balance of life, whereas the heart is very much in touch. So when you achieve things from your mind, you're like, you have this list and you're just going and going and going. And there's no sense of reflection. Whereas if you live from your heart, we talked about this being in the divine flow of life. It's like there is this divine flow. When you align yourself with this divine flow, you get a lot of things done, but you also get a lot of time to relax. And I have to think about our teacher, Sri Chinmoy. He was a great example. Who's somebody, when we saw him, he was always seen very relaxed. Like he would sit in his lounge chair, we would meditate together. But at the same time, he'd be writing poems, he'd be composing songs, he would be drawing birds. He drew a lot of these little soul birds. So he was very active, and at the same time, there was a very deep, relaxed, and he could enjoy chatting and telling stories and really taking the time to slow down. And he achieved unbelievable things. He created hundreds of thousands of paintings, millions of drawings, hundreds of thousands of poems, more than 1,600 books that he wrote. So if you see the numbers, it's like you'd think somebody who's always like at his desk, like going at it,
Yeah.
But he had a great sense of peace at the same time, and I think that's where you have achieved this beautiful balance in your life and living totally from the heart.
Yeah, it's valuing time properly, and when you value time properly, you bring more of yourself into the present moment. Because you realize that this is the place where life is happening, and your ideas about the future, although they may be beautiful and inspiring, that's not where your access to your power or your capacities is. All of your true capacities are available only in this present moment. And so that's what I always saw with him. He was someone deeply at ease with himself, and he was deeply at ease with being here in the present moment. There was never a sense that he was rushing to get somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
He was always deeply immersed in the moment. And I think when you do that and you really immerse yourself in the moment, then spontaneity, creativity, all of these things come naturally. And it's not a matter of having to force writing a poem. It's you're present, the inspiration is there, and the poem comes through you. You become a conduit through which creativity can express itself. And that's a really beautiful thing to watch, but it's an even more beautiful thing to experience yourself. Because very often we take everything we do as it should be hard work. We have to really push and pull to make things happen. And you see that with a lot of people say, a good example is a writer. Writing is a difficult process to start often because we have to get ourselves aligned into the moment properly to actually allow the words and images and the ideas to start flowing through us.
Yeah.
But when you actually are already present and connected and fully here, then it's much easier for the creativity to actually start coming through you. And then writing doesn't become a chore, it becomes a real joy because there's when you're feeling inspiration and you're feeling these ideas, and it's such a joy to get them down, like catch them. It's like all these beautiful birds are flying in your heart sky, and you're catching them and you're turning them into some physical form that you can share with someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, many writers say they actually have to get out of the way. That's when the real writing happens. It's like there's this idea of hammering.
Yeah.
But it's like the moment when you get out of the way is when the real beautiful poetry or the creative ideas come.
Because I think you've talked to me about a practice that many writers do where they sit down and they just make themselves write for some period of time.
It's very famous. It's called Morning Pages. I forget the author's name. The Artist's Way is her book, and she tells it's not only for writers, it's for anyone. Just sit down in the morning and just start writing, and don't think about what you're writing. Just start writing whatever comes up. It's like very stream of consciousness, and you write. I think it's 3 pages, and you write until you're done with 3 pages. And actually, they're not for safekeeping. It's just probably but many people say when they do that, it's in the beginning a lot of kind of rubbish comes out, like mental stuff that is just silly. But then after some time, the flow comes through and they feel like, oh, now I'm really, in the flow. And so it really helps you to get out of the way, as it were, because sometimes you have this mental garbage. It just has to get out of the way.
Yeah.
You have to write it out, and then the creative flow starts. So that's an exercise to get your creativity flowing.
Yeah, and for me, that exercise really captures the idea that you need to get yourself out of your own mind. So to start with, you're just writing down all of the things that have been going around in your own thought world. And then at some point you exhaust that, and then suddenly there's a space. There's a space where creativity and where your heart can start connecting with some of these deeper ideals or the deeper creative part of your being. So I really think that talks to what we're talking about.
Yeah, great. So we talked about patience, the value of it, but how do we develop it? It seems like patience, it's just something you can't develop it. It's there. You just wait. You just wait until the goal comes. But I think there are ways to develop patience. What would you say?
Yeah, well, I'd say like if you take it as a combination of many other parts of your being, I think patience starts to naturally occur when you get yourself aligned properly. So when you're in your mind, it's very difficult to live a
Right.
life of patience.
Yeah.
But it's when you start living from your heart and you start to develop some real inner strength and some substance to your spiritual life. I think that's when you start to find that you're no longer pushed and pulled by your mind and by the world, the temptations of the world, or your ideas about the world. And instead, you start to feel like you've got your feet solidly on the ground. You've got like a solid foundation, because if you're only used to dealing with the world from your mind is really not a solid foundation to deal with the world from. Because your mind, one day you're inspired, the next day you're full of doubt and worry. One day you're anxious and you're jealous of someone. The next day you're extolling yourself to the skies. So there's not a sense of continuity, and there's not a sense of a really strong, solid foundation.
Yeah.
And I think through doing a spiritual practice, however you do that, over many years, you start to develop like a foundation that is very strong and deep. And from that, you can start to deal with the world with a lot more poise and patience.
It's more a state of awareness then.
Yeah, it's like your consciousness is not so fickle. It's not pulled here and there, because you've started to learn to anchor it to the deepest part of your being. So instead of it being the surface of a lake where there's the waves coming and there's boats zipping around, there's always a guy on a jet ski,
Love that
speeding around, spraying water everywhere. When you start to really connect with the deepest part of your being, it's like the depths of the ocean. It's like the depths of the lake. You drop down into those depths, and there's a tremendous, profound stillness there. And if you make that your foundation instead of the surface is never level. It's always moving. It's always chopping and changing. And so it's the practice is the thing that starts to anchor you to the deep parts of your being, which are really strong and powerful.
Exactly. So I think meditation is a really good way to develop patience. Meditation itself is, in a sense, it's just being there, present. And I think, but also long distance endurance events like we do with running. I think running and long distance endurance events, biking, swimming, whatever it is you do, also develops patience as a quality, because you have a goal, but the goal is very, very far away. Let's say you go on a 2-hour long run, and you want to run whatever it is, 25K. The goal seems really far at the beginning of that run. It's like, oh my God, I have to run for 2 hours. But you have to put that out of your mind and just start running, and then you just start enjoying the run. At some point, you get into the flow. We did a run like that last week, didn't we?
We did.
Central Park. And I remember in the beginning, I was a little bit daunted because I hadn't done many long runs recently. And so when we went off, it was like, okay, this is it's going to be challenging. But then, we started off, and you're seeing the surroundings, and all of a sudden you're in that divine flow. And then patience is just there. And I think the more you do that, the more you practice long distance events, patience really comes into your being, because for so many times you've had to, work very long to get to the goal, whether it's a marathon or whether it's a multi-day race or whether it's a triathlon. The goal is very far away at the beginning. And so you have to, by practicing that over and over, every time you realize, hey, I'm finishing, I'm going to the goal, but it just takes its time.
Yeah.
And I think the more things you have in your life to practice that, whether it's a long distance event, so maybe just, starting a new education takes 4 to 6 years perhaps to get a diploma. You have to have patience and just go day by day, go through the process.
Yeah.
And enjoy the process.
And there's some element of surrender to the experience there. Like in the early part of the experience, you're still too fixated on reaching the goal.
Yeah.
And so that's constantly pulling your awareness away from the now.
That's a very good point. That in the beginning, you have this over focus on the goal. I like that.
Yeah.
That's good as kind of to be aware of.
Yeah, and if you can the more you can just surrender into the doing of the experience. And then this is actually really useful for anything that you need to do, because it may be that you're renovating your house and you have to paint the whole house. Yeah. That's also something that is incredibly daunting, and your goal is for your house to be transformed. But the actual physical steps to go about to do it takes a tremendous amount of patience and just turning up and persevering to make those changes. So I think any form of transformation or any form of practice, deep practice in life actually does require a tremendous amount of patience. So if you can learn to develop patience as well in one avenue or one aspect of your life, it becomes such a gift, because it may be that you already are doing some exercise. So you've started to learn patience around your practice, and perhaps you've got a spiritual practice, so you have the patience to turn up on a daily basis to do your spiritual practice. And then you decide, okay, I would like to learn a musical instrument. And you have this vision of yourself playing some songs, learning some melodies, having some competency. But in the beginning, if that is your only motivation,
it's very just that end goal.
It's very easy to give up, because once you start any practice or any journey, you often realize early on, oh, it's actually a lot longer than I thought it was.
And I think it's the same way it happens with people who are learning a new language.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you talk like a 3-year-old. Yeah. And people also respond to you as if you're a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And I get that a lot because I live in a city where a lot of tourists and expats are living. Yeah. And when they're starting to learn Dutch, they go through this phase where they're really a 5-year-old. Yeah. And we're also talking to them as if they're 5-years-old,
Yeah.
Enunciating the words and does he get it? And it feels very humiliating, and it's very frustrating. But you have to keep practicing and keep practicing. And you have to go through this phase. Whereas if you think, oh, I'll just switch languages and I'll just speak, have great conversations all the time, that's not going to happen. That's going to take time and effort and practice.
Yeah, so that's another level of surrender there. We have to sometimes surrender our own pride and our own ego to actually allow us to grow into things that are going to be valuable. And very often, especially if we already have achieved something in one field, it's very easy to think when you go into a new field that you should immediately have some skill or some competency there. But that's not the case. Like you say, like the analogy of the language there, when you are learning a new language, you really have to be humble, and you have to surrender to the experience. You have to accept that this is the nature of the experience, and you have to be willing to embrace that and go through it. And each of those pathways, or each of those lessons will help teach you patience.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to just read out something that our teacher Sri Chinmoy wrote about patience, and kind of help us to get a little deeper into it. He wrote, "What is patience? It is a divine virtue. Unfortunately, not only are we badly wanting in this divine virtue, but we also neglect it most foolishly. What is a patience? It is an inner assurance of God's unreserved love and unconditional guidance. Patience is God's power hidden in us to weather the teeming storms of life. If failure has the strength to turn your life into bitterness itself, then patience has the strength to turn your life into the sweetest joy. Do not surrender to fate after a single failure. Failure at most precedes success, but success once achieved gives you the name of confidence." So here it's an assurance of God's unreserved love, and it's a hidden power to weather the teeming storms of life. That's also what patience does. It really helps us get through the difficult times.
Yeah, and I think that's that aspect of strength that patience provides.
Right.
When we have true patience, it does give us the strength to weather the ups and downs of life. And all of us are going to have times in our life where we need to have patience, and we need to have that inner conviction and that inner strength just to keep on going. Life, there's a great saying that nothing will ever hit you as hard as life does. And so nothing's going to knock you down like life will. So having the patience and the strength it's almost like that patience realizes that your goal is still ahead of you. It realizes that there's some future reality that is going to be more fulfilling, more meaningful, deeper and more beautiful than what you're experiencing now. And it's by having that vision of the future that allows you to deal with the present moment.
Exactly. And there's also hope involved there. I think hope feeds patience. If you have hope for a better world or a better reality. We talked about hope last week a little bit.
Yeah.
And I had to defend it because
you did.
Hope is still very valuable in that way. And I like this idea of when we fail, sometimes we feel we're so discouraged we give up the whole thing. But here again, patience can be a real teacher, and to say, wait, failure is just part of the process of learning the skill, of learning whatever it is you want to learn. And so don't give up after just one failure.
Yeah.
You'll have many failures until you reach the goal. So celebrate those failures.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the idea. Someone did a statistical analysis of Roger Federer's tennis career. And In his entire tennis career, he only won 54% of all of the points he played.
Wow.
So, each game...
Seems very low.
But the thing is, you only need to be winning just over 50% to be winning each match. If you're winning just over 50%, you're going to win the match.
Yeah.
And so you understand though that you fail so often. Like he failed like on the amount of he paid probably millions or hundreds of thousands of points.
Yeah.
And he lost 500,000 of them. So 500,000 times he was playing with someone and he lost that point.
Yeah.
And you would think, wow, so much failure. How could he feel that he was successful?
Yeah, if you had a reel of all his failed shots, you would put that together. What a horrible tennis player.
Exactly, but that's the thing with everything that you're learning and you're practicing, that you don't need to win every single time to be successful in life. You just need to win a little bit more than you lose.
Yes.
And that's going to allow you to keep moving ahead. So with your meditations, it's not that every meditation practice you do needs to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Or that every interaction with another human being needs to be fantastic. But if every week you have a few more wins than you have losses, that is going to keep you moving forward. And that's going to be the thing that's going to bring about your transformation and the revelation of your potential. So it's really nice to think of success as not being just simply winning. It's even just turning up and failing on a regular basis.
Exactly.
Because by doing that, you're learning something. Each time you fail, it's a little bit of information that you didn't have before. Like for Roger Federer as a tennis player, each time he hit it out, he learned something a little bit more about, okay, how much angle he needs to put on it, how much spin he needs to put on the ball. And in our lives as well, like if we keep turning up and keep failing, but doing it with awareness and openness, we'll learn something from each of those failures. Each time we try and interact with someone or try and achieve something and it doesn't quite go how we thought, at least we've learned something. We've at least learned how not to do it.
No, exactly. So it's very valuable information.
Which is surprisingly valuable. And so if you just keep turning up, at some point you'll start to see that you'll start to win more than you lose. But you need that patience to work through that whole process.
Yeah, and knowing that failures are just as much a part of success as the eventual success.
Yeah,
I like the analogy of a child learning how to walk. When a child learns how to walk when it's 1 year old, it falls down all the time. It gets up, it takes 1 or 2 steps, boom, it lies down again. It's like it takes hundreds of these failures.
Yeah,
but the child never gives up. There's this innate patience that the child will just keep on trying, and then eventually it succeeds.
Hey, you can really tell we're in New York now. Yes. It's a real New York experience.
We got live sirens going by. Yeah, that's also part of our spiritual retreats, with sirens in the background. Wonderful.
What I was thinking is that it's really interesting because with a child, we really give the child a lot of grace. We say, okay, the child is learning, the child is developing, the child is failing and failing and failing. But we don't say either to a child, hey, buddy, you're not very good at this. You probably should give up. Probably stop trying and think of something else to do.
There's only encouragement.
But when we get and become an adult, somehow we lose that spirit. Like some time in our teenage years or in our high school, perhaps is the time we start to lose this. But we lose that willingness to fail repeatedly, and we think that failures somehow reflect something on our character.
Yeah,
which they absolutely don't. Like you look at you look at the most successful people in the world, all of them have failed tremendously, either in business or in their relationships or in so many different fields. And so if we can give ourselves that grace to allow ourselves to continually to turn up and potentially fail, that's going to transform our lives. But it also is such a gift to give the people around you as well. Like not judging the people around you because at the moment they're not successful at what they're trying, or they haven't shown any ability in a particular field. All people need is time and patience, and they will improve at whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a travesty and such a tragedy for humanity that, for me, one of the great tragedies is when people die with unmanifest potential. Like there's a great saying, what is the most expensive piece of real estate in a city? And the answer is the cemetery, because it's got all of the unmanifest ideas, all of the great works of art, all of the novels, all of the businesses that were never started. They're all buried there. And I think one of the great gifts we can give to ourselves and also our friends and our families is to give them that grace and that encouragement that, hey, you're turning up and you're trying, and that's all that really matters in life, because all of those failures that someone's going through at some point will become the pillars of their success in the future.
Yeah, and it's really good to realize that your failures are necessary steps, because it's actually a good sign. You say, hey, I'm failing. That's great. I'm on the way. I'm on the process, and I will eventually be successful. And all you need, and I just read something that Sri wrote about that, is devotion and patience. So they go together. So devotion, this idea, we talked about devotion, but perhaps not in a spiritual or religious way, but just being very dedicated to the goal.
Yeah.
When you have a devotion, you want to achieve something, you want to become a great tennis player. So you have this inner devotion, then all you need is patience. And there was a quote by Einstein. Let's see where it is. Einstein said, if one gets hold of something that will not let go its hold on him, in short, if one has a devotion for a great work, what more is necessary? Patience. Then a little more patience. So,
I also like the way that he mentioned like an idea or something catching hold of you.
Right.
Because I think that's a really unexamined or overlooked part of life, is that at times we have an interaction with an idea or an activity, and somehow it just grips us. Suddenly we're like, wow, this is something that I really want to dive into.
And you don't know why.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's often not coming from the conscious part of our being. It's not like we thought about all of the options of what we could do.
Yeah.
And somehow this one particular thing captured us. And like, for example, like Ironman triathletes.
Yeah.
Because you've done some Ironmans. This is a really long and hard event. And very often people will not be interested in triathlon at all. Like you get a lot of people coming into Ironman who haven't really done a lot of exercise, but they were sitting on a Sunday morning and Kona Ironman, the world champs, which is in Hawaii, pops on TV. And they sit there and they watch it for half an hour.
They're gripped.
Then they decide, right, I'm going to do an Ironman.
Yeah.
And it's just such a ludicrous concept. But there's something about it. And what I really think is what's happening there is there's some part of your soul, the deeper part of your being, is recognizing in the people doing that activity that they've developed some particular qualities or some particular attributes that your deeper part of your being desperately knows that you need. And so to do something like an Ironman, you need a lot of patience, you need a lot of willpower, you need a lot of discipline. And so often you'll see people who've come from a background of not exercising regularly, and they've just got this total inspiration that they want to do an Ironman. And there's some part of their higher self has realized, okay, this is the vehicle that is going to teach me those skills. It's going to transform me in the way that I need to be transformed.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And I think that's really...
Call it gripping. Something grips you.
Yeah.
It can be gardening,
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be super glorious.
Exactly. It's something that there's some part of you has seen something meaningful in that. And very often as a secondary effect, we try and justify it. We try and say, oh, well, I need to lose some weight, or, I knew it would be good for my cardiovascular. It's like, none of that was what you were feeling when you first got gripped by the activity. It's like we're putting those are all secondary justifications.
Yes. Our mind likes to explain things.
Yeah.
Crazy things. Okay. So, what also I like to talk about is the difference between patience and tolerance, because they sometimes are, taken together, but there is a difference. And Sri Chinmoy writes about that. He says that sometimes we think that surrendered tolerance is patience, but this is wrong. We have tolerance only because we feel that there is no other way for us. But this tolerance is not patience at all. No, real patience has to be utilized in the form of wisdom. Real patience is oneness. Real patience will wait for eternity while the individual progresses. But if it's only tolerance that is trying to take the role of patience, then there will be no real satisfaction. So surrendered tolerance, like we feel we have to tolerate something, that is patience. But patience seems to be much deeper, much richer.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Tolerance shows a sense of we're forcing ourselves to do it in some way. It's like, oh, okay, I'll tolerate you if you tolerate me.
Yeah.
I'll tolerate your
I'll be patient with the people around me.
Yeah.
Basically tolerant of them.
Yeah, but that's not real patience, because patience has this depth and it has the spiritual aspect to it that transcends the niceties of social situations. Like it's kind of socially accepted that we should tolerate how people want to live their lives. And you know, that plays a role in society, you know, and makes for a more harmonious society. But true patience is something much more profound than that. It's not just, oh, okay, I tolerate my friend, you know, doing this activity, but I don't really encourage it. I don't think it's actually good for him, but I'll tolerate it.
Yeah,
so
right.
There's some sense of that. Whereas when we have real patience, either for ourselves or for our loved ones, we see that there's a reality in front of them. We see that they're moving towards
they're
something.
progressing.
There's something that's beginning to flower and blossom in their lives. And so we're patiently waiting for that to appear. And we're not forcing it. We're not trying to rush it. We're not trying to push and pull to make it happen. We realize that it takes its own time. And there's something really beautiful about that. It's like the idea that you would go out every day and you would, try and force your flowers to blossom in springtime. You'd say, when are you going to blossom? Come on, I'm watering you. The sun is shining. What is wrong with you? I mean, we can see that's such a foolish idea. But yet we very easily do it to ourselves, or we do it to our loved ones or people around us. So I think real patience has that wisdom to know that there's a right moment and a right time for everything. And I know Sri Chinmoy made a really great comment about very often we think it's the right time for us, that this is, it should be happening right now. It should be happening right now. And maybe on some level of our being, we're ready for the experience. So maybe our heart, maybe our soul is really feeling that this is what we need to manifest in our lives. But perhaps our physical and our vital are completely unready for this experience. And so if you force that experience at that moment, it's happening before its time, and you're not going to get the full result. You're not going to get it fully embodied into your
It's like running a marathon untrained.
Yeah.
You can reach the finish line, but you'll be, injured, and you will not enjoy the experience. And
I know a lot of athletes had that when they're coming back from being injured. They have an idea, I want to be as fit as I was 6 months ago. And then they often end up causing themselves problems because they're pushed too hard, too soon. They become disappointed by their workouts or the times that they're running because they remember what they were doing and they're not actually accepting and being patient with where they're at that moment. That then their body is not quite the same as it was 6 months ago. And so I always find that when you do a race as an athlete, that especially if you do a long race, like just before the race, you're in your absolute peak shape. Your fitness is amazing and you're tapered and you feel amazing. And then you run a marathon, for example. And then the week after the marathon, you feel absolutely destroyed. You're hobbling around and you think, God, what happened to all of that amazing physical capacity I've developed? And then once you start training again, you need to be patient with yourself. You need to accept that this is part of the journey, that the body is recovering and recuperating. It's rebuilding itself after a huge stress. And you have to be very patient at that time to think and to let go of any expectations, just to allow yourself to slowly start moving.
Yeah, I like this idea of talking about getting fit for a race. You're building a big barn, you're building a beautiful house.
Yeah.
And then on race day, you just set it on fire.
Yeah, and then the week after, you're living in the ashes.
The ashes, complete ruins.
And then slowly again, you have to start building it again.
There's another great idea I like about how to develop patience, and that is especially when we talk about, let's say, the goal of goals, enlightenment in the spiritual realm. If we talk about realization or liberation, these really lofty goals that we're trying to achieve. I mean, we know we have to be really patient because that is totally not up to us. But there's an idea that is very helpful, is to feel that the goal actually needs you more than you need it.
Yeah.
And so definitely if we talk about the Supreme or the Divine, that the Supreme wants to manifest himself, herself, itself through us. We are just the instruments. There's a famous teaching from the Bhagavad Gita that says, be a mere instrument. Be thou a mere instrument. It's what Krishna instructs Arjuna. And that is a great strategy for life. And if we realize that we are instruments, then we know also there's a player. There's somebody who wants to use the instruments, and that is our creator. And so if we can be if we can know that the goal, that the divine needs us more than we need it, then patience automatically dawns.
And that's actually one of the most fundamentally transformative ideas you can actually bring to bear on your life, because we as individuals, we have far less agency than we perhaps give ourselves credit for. We think we're doing everything in the world. We think it's up to us to make all these changes and make all these transformations and try and achieve all of these goals. But at the end of the day, the part of our being that we are identified with is a very finite and limited part. And when we can start to learn that we are not the doer, that there is a higher force that can use us and make us an instrument, then suddenly it transforms our lives in two ways. First of all, we're allowing the unlimited part of ourselves to act through us. So instead of us trying to use our small self and trying to force our limited, unlimited will of the world, which is never going to go well. If it was just me and my will trying to create a perfect life, it would never go anywhere, because what do I know? Like the limitations that I'm dealing with are so great that I can never really see things as they truly are, and I can never really know what is going to be the right decision to make in any situation. But if I can allow that unlimited, that divine creative spark and spirit to act in and through me, it intuitively knows exactly what is the right activity for me to do, for the right place for me to be at, the right thing for me to say. All of these things suddenly start to flow in such a beautiful and natural way. And the quality of my life will be drastically improved by surrendering the small self to the unlimited self within me. So that's a huge thing. But even just on a more practical level, it's incredibly stressful for people to try and will their way through the world, to try and calculate and plan and strategize how they should move through the world.
Yeah.
It's an impossible task. And so if you can actually, even in small ways, start to surrender that need to control things and start to surrender and feel as though that there is a goal in front of you and it does want you to arrive there. And the situations and the opportunities it's putting in front of you are the best possible ones for you to learn the lessons you need to learn. Suddenly your life takes on such a different hue, because before, when you're using your own will, every obstacle or roadblock is you curse it. Like, why is this in the way? I'm trying to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's a really great Stoic philosophy that says that the obstacle is the way. Like everything that you find in your path is the lessons that you need to learn. Each of them will teach you the lessons you need to learn. So when something goes wrong, instead of you cursing the universe, you suddenly embrace it and say, oh my God, thank you. Like this is going to teach me a lesson that otherwise I would not have learned. And it takes away so much of the stress and the anxiety that people feel, because they feel this burning need to control. And it's completely unrealistic. There's no possible way you can control this game.
Yeah.
And so the greatest lesson to learn is to surrender and practice true ultimate surrender and acceptance of the situations. Because each situation, if you feel as though the goal wants you to arrive there, you'll start to feel that each situation you find yourself in has been laid out in a way that will help you move towards that goal.
Yeah, it's all part of the process and part of the journey. Right? That's wonderful. And also, I think what limits us a lot is our sometimes unconscious mind when we talk about impatience or patience. Is that when we want to achieve something, we may not know when we will achieve it, and we may not have a set goal, but unconsciously we set a goal, and we're very often unconscious of it, and we'll practice and practice, and at some point we'll feel disappointed.
Yeah,
and that's when we've crossed that unconscious deadline that we've put for ourselves. And so after that, you can feel a great discouragement, forget about this gardening. I'll never, my garden will never be beautiful, because unconsciously you've probably set your goal 4 months into the future.
Yeah.
And it's really good to be aware of that when that happens, when you get that kind of disappointment, you've just set your goal too far, too soon into the future. And it's an unconscious thing. It's not even a conscious thing. And so it's also good to know when we deal about patience that when we have these kind of moments of discouragement, we need more patience, basically, right? We need to inject our practice with a little more patience. Like Einstein said, you need patience and then a little more patience. You can never have enough, basically.
Yeah, and how many people have given up at the moment just before the success was going to come.
I don't want to think about that.
Yeah, I think there's untold number of situations and amazing creations or amazing achievements that never happen because someone just stopped that little bit too early. And especially once you have the feeling that this goal is valuable, like especially if it's something that's really gripped you or it's come to you through your practice, and you've got the feeling like, okay, this is something that I don't know why, I don't know exactly how, but I know that if I follow this path through, there's going to be some transformation for me. And that's where never giving up becomes such a valuable philosophy, because Shuchen was used the analogy, I know, when you're turning on the gas oven.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're turning on the gas oven, it's starting to click and it seems like the gas is coming, but it's not catching. And so there's no flame. And so at some point you think, it must be broken, and you stop.
Yeah.
But that was just the moment just before the whole thing was going to catch fire, and you're going to have this, burning reality there.
Exactly.
And each of us has to know, and each of us can probably remember times in our own lives where we were really dedicated to something, and then we stopped it. And very often when we look back at those things, we really wish if only I'd carried on that practice. It might have been a meditative practice. It might have been a physical fitness program. It may have been a diet, or it may have been just any activity that required some commitment and discipline, and some effort, that we stopped because we became discouraged.
Yeah.
And if we look back and we realize, I really should have kept going there.
Exactly.
That's a moment where we'd unconsciously sabotaged ourselves. We'd set ourselves an unconscious goal, and when reality didn't meet our unconscious goal, then we just give it up.
And the thing is, we're not conscious of it, so that makes it doubly difficult to deal with, because we don't know that we actually set that deadline. We think, it's just life is just showing us this is not for you.
Yeah.
So devotion and patience, they're a great couple together.
Patience, and then a little more patience.
More patience. So let that be perhaps the closing words for today. Thank you very much for joining us so far. And also, Vajan, I have to say too, if you are a listener in the Netherlands, then we are going to have a festival meditation week coming up. And
wow.
You're coming to Amsterdam for that. And it's going to start on the 28th of September, Monday to Friday. And Vajan and me will be there. And perhaps we will...
In the flesh. In the physical
we'll have
bodies.
some interesting meditative exercising and some talks. So if you're in the neighborhood, if you want to come to Amsterdam, we'll put a link in the show notes. You can register for this meditation week. And if not, we hope to see you in the next podcast. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.